Vice Chancellor of Central University of Rajasthan, Professor Neeraj Gupta ji, the Honorable Registrar of Sikkim University, Professor Kameshwar Rao Garu, the wisdom quotient of India and abroad, the deans, principals, faculty members, and my dearest brothers and sisters. It's an absolute privilege to be with all of you this afternoon. The topic which we are going to have a bird's eye view on, because in 1 hour we can just merely scratch the surface of this ocean of ancient Indian wisdom and its relevance to contemporary learning spaces, with relevance specifically to higher education. I would present my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Yeah. So we are going to discuss on ancient Indian wisdom and its relevance to contemporary higher education institutions, learning spaces. India is a very rich country in its culture. It has given the world nectarine thoughts. It has also given to the world that every person is potentially divine. When Sri Aurobindo defined education, he said that the process of education has been set into motion for the ripening of, and Swami Vivekananda said education is for the manifestation of already existing perfection inside a man. So, ancient Indian wisdom, when it speaks about wisdom, it talks about 360-degree development of a man. And none other than Albert Einstein supported this particular aspect when he said, I have the greatest regard for India and Indian people. Firstly, for their contribution to the treasure of traditional knowledge, and secondly, for their contribution to zero and number system, to the world civilization, without which none of the discoveries and inventions would have been possible. So this is a rich tribute to the Indian knowledge system and the traditional knowledge system of India, which has evolved over centuries. What is the challenge today? What we are facing? Unemployment or unemployability. The statistics say that 16 to 20% of graduates today are unemployed. But when ASSOCHEM did a survey on the graduating engineers and the MBA graduates, the Economic Times brought out an article that 80% of the graduating engineers are unemployable. Even if they are employed, they are not employed in their core specialization. 93% of the MBA graduates are unemployable. And even if they are to be employed, they are not able to find a place on their field of study. This is because they lack both life skills and technical. Secondly, there is a lack of development. There is a beautiful saying that it is not only the aptitude, but it is the attitude which determines your altitude. Very importantly, aptitude, intellectual development can happen. But when we talk of emotional development, when we talk of psychological development, when we talk of spiritual development, this would determine your attitude. So, aptitude plus attitude is equal to altitude, is what we need to understand. So, lack of this 360-degree transformation of a man is lacking. Many of the students in the learning spaces today are like passive hubs. Passive hubs have been obsolete in management information systems. We have got switches which have active hubs have come, and also switches have come to replace passive hubs. But even today, it is a student takes from a paper and puts it directly to the paper without even taking it to the mind. So it is just transferring signals on, and lack of both life skills and personality skills. These are some of the challenges the present day learning spaces they are encountered with. But what is the purpose of education? When I saw the write up, I was delighted to say that Rig Veda quotes the first Veda when Veda Vyasa divided the Vedas into four: Rig, Yajus, Sama, and Atharvana Veda. Rig Veda talks about education is that which liberates you. Savidya ya vimuktaye. Very importantly, the purpose of education is ripening of a man through 360-degree transformation. A man not only grows physically, he awakens intellectually, he ripens psychologically, and rises spiritually. We need to understand. So, this 360-degree transformation should be the objective of every educational institution. The second most important thing is to create harmony in people. Number one, development of man. Number two, development of people around us. And number three is to aid sustainability, that is, to contribute to the planet. Harmony within the self, harmony between individuals, and harmony across society and the planet. A student, a learner in the learning space is not a jug where you can pour water and it overflows after a particular limit. He is not a jug. You need to ignite the lamp of wisdom. It has to be the lamp of wisdom. A teacher who dares to teach should care to be illuminated from various lamps. He needs to be illuminated through various teachers. And then he goes and ignites one learner's mind. That is what is important. So the transformation from a learner in the learning space of being a jug should be transformed to a lamp. A lamp glows. A candle glows. And when the candle glows or lamp glows, as it glows, it gives light to the entire surroundings. It first of all shows itself, and it also shows what is around it. A learner, a student should not only show himself, but should also show the people around him. The second aspect, as the candle glows, as the lamp glows, it starts melting. It starts losing its shape. It starts slowly diminishing. In the same way, the body loses its shape. The body diminishes day by day, but what is the contribution? What we have given to others from our learning is very, very important. And that is the spirit of the song. Kal hum na rahenge, tum na rahoge, rahegi hamari nishaniya. A man will come and go, but what he has contributed to the world will be remembered by posterity. And this is absolutely important. What we contribute is going to be remembered, and that you can contribute only and only if we have unadulterated love to the entire humanity. And that is what Raj Kapoor sang, Pyar Hua, Ikrar Hua. That is very, very important. So, every learner is like a lamp, and the teacher, instructor, facilitator has to illuminate the entire learning space by lighting that lamp. The aims of ancient education system, very importantly, to realize the supreme, because we have come, either if at all we have evolved, like the biological sciences, students would say, we are not created, we evolve. Whether we evolve or we are created, we have to reach our destination someday or the other. So to realize the supreme, to realize the Brahman, to realize the potential which is there inside all of us, to realize the infinity which is there inside all of us, is the aim of education. To thread the path of truthfulness and righteousness. The second aim of education in ancient Indian texts is to thread the path of truthfulness and righteousness. The Taittiriya Upanishad says, Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara. We will come to that. To preserve this and spread the ancient culture, to manifest the spiritual and moral powers lying within an individual, to develop the physical, mental, intellectual seeds of the learner, to aid formation of good and moral character. This is very, very important. In the Subhashita, it is beautifully said, Vidya dadati vinayam, vinayadhyati patratam, patratva dhanamapnoti, vidya dadati vinayam. Learning gives us humility. Humility fills us with more and more learning, which will transform itself into wisdom. And once that happens, we start rising in moral character. Very importantly, our thought, words, and deed have to be absolutely splendid for this, because the ancient Indian wisdom says, what is the ornament for a man? Is it the gold what he wears? Is it the attire what he dons? Is it the various perfumes what he dons? That is not the ornament for a man. The ornament for a man is his speech. And the speech of a man would show the wisdom of a man and his moral character. Keyurani nabhushayanti purusham harana chandrojvala nasnanam navilepanam nakusumam na alankrita murthaja vanyeka samalankaroti purusham या संस्कृता धार्यते क्षीयन्ते खलु भूषणानि सततं वाग्भूषणं भूषणं वाग्भूषणं भूषणं. That is, the speech is the ornament of a man. And a man who has formed himself with good and moral character would speak like honey to inculcate social and civic duties, to foster occasional efficiency, health, positive attitude, and dignity of labor in learners or students. These were the aims of ancient education system. And in the ancient times, the process of education was this. The Upanishads say, Atmavare Shrotavyaha Mantavyaha Nididhyasitavyaha Drashtavyaha. Shrotavyaha. The Creator has blessed us with 2 ears. So listening is very, very important, and the ears are open, the mouth is closed. There are 2 ears and one mouth. At least listen 2 times than what we speak. Shrotavyaha, Mantavyaha. Whatever we speak, we need to continuously contemplate. Manan karna. Mantavyaha, Nididhyasitavyaha. That is, bring into practice what we have learned. It is not learning or knowledge which is power. It is applied knowledge which is power. We develop in wisdom only through applied knowledge. Nididhyasitavyaha. That is practice. And once we start doing this, drashtavyaha, we realize, we go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper in our body of knowledge, and then bring out something which is absolutely unique. And the education system in ancient India, we had world class universities 2700 years back. We had Takshashila, Nalanda, which gave the world the nectar of educational system. Great original thinkers who discovered, invented, scholars like Charaka, Sushruta, Panini, Aryabhatta, Varahamihira, Bhaskara, Chanakya, and a host of others contributed to the Indian knowledge system. Renowned scholars and students from all over the world used to converge to the universities in India to learn our Indian wisdom. Multidisciplinary learning, teaching, and research were rampant in these universities. Original knowledge creation in all disciplines, constituting a great treasure of traditional knowledge, ancient India was indeed a world leader in knowledge and creation of new knowledge. And today, we need to search in the top 100 universities of India as to how many universities are there. This we need to capitalize on what our ancient Indian thinkers have given us. It might be in Sanskrit. Sanskrit might be an optional language today, but one of the saddest things is ancient Indian wisdom today finds predominantly its place in temples, in puja mandirs, and places of worship. It has very rarely come to places of work. When we go around countries like China, Japan, and all these countries, their ancient Indian wisdom forms the philosophy, the work philosophy. When we talk of Confucianism, when we talk of Taoism, when we talk of the Zen culture, the Kaizen culture, which talks about continuous improvement in operations management, when we teach in the class, we talk of Japanese management system, we talk in quality management, Kaizen is an inseparable subject. When Masaki Imai gave the name Kaizen, continuous improvement, everyone improvement, everything improvement, everywhere improvement. This is how he says. And that became a philosophy which originated from the Japanese haikus. Haikus are verses from the ancient wisdom of Japan, and that was basically reformed as Kaizen, and it went to Japan's place of work. So, ancient education system, the National Education Policy 2020, today talks about 64 kalas. It talks about ancient Indian wisdom to be brought in to modern education. It talks about value system which has to be brought in, the holistic development which has to be brought in. The section 12 of the National Education Policy talks about holistic education and the life skills which has to be developed, and it would be really, really beneficial to all the learners in the Indian universities and colleges to embrace these thoughts and develop themselves 360 degrees. The Taittiriya Upanishad, we start with quotes from a few ancient texts. After 12 to 15 years of learning, on the day when the student bids farewell to the teacher, during the farewell, the teacher advises the students, which is from the Siksha Valli, the 11th Anuvaka of the Taittiriya Upanishad, Vedamanu Chacharyo Ante Vasinam Anushasti. After teaching the Vedas, in the end, the teacher instructs the pupil. What does he instruct? He would not give a viva of the entire 4 years or 3 years what the student has studied. The teacher is sure that he has internalized that particular subject. The first teaching or the first farewell message to the student is Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, Swadhyaya Anma Pramadaha. Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara. Speak always the truth. From thought, word, and deed, it should be truth what you speak. Dharmam Chara. Go in the path of righteousness. Perform your duties with righteousness in your mind. Swadhyaya Anma Pramadaha. Swadhyaya Anma Pramadaha. Do not neglect the self-study of the Vedas, because predominantly Vedaha Akhila Dharma Moolam. Everything is contained in the Vedas. I also recently, I was traveling with a couple of my students who are leading gynecologists in this part of the country. And during one of the discussions with Swamiji, these couple of gynecologists were talking about IVF and how, talking about surrogate motherhood, how IVF functions. He was quoting from the Rig Veda that even IVF is and surrogate mothership is there in the Vedas. He was quoting verses from there. That is why whichever body of knowledge we take, we will have to spend at least some time in a day to develop, go deep into that particular knowledge. Swadhyaya Anma Pramadaha Acharyaya Priyam Dhanamahritya Prajatantum Vyavachetsi. Acharyaya Priyam Dhanamahritya Prajatantum Ma Vyavachetsi. It says, after giving the gift desired by a teacher, do not break the chain of your progeny. Satyanna pramaditavyam. This tabya pratyaya. From here, everything is tabyam, 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 tabyam. Tabya pratyaya means you need to compulsorily follow it. There is no exception to this rule. Satyanna pramaditavyam. Do not neglect truth. Dharmanna pramaditavyam. Do not neglect your duty. Kushalanna pramaditavyam. Do not neglect your health. Bhutyaina pramaditavyam. Do not neglect your material well-being, but do not get attached to it. Vedas say, do not neglect material well-being. Very importantly, it talks about pravritti marga and not nivritti marga. Many people feel that if we have to embrace spirituality, we will have to run away from this world. But through our karmas, whatever we get, we should not get attached to it, but we need to use it judiciously by first being thankful to the Creator who has given it to us, and also distributing it among people and not being selfishly possessing it, leaving possession and leaving attachment. We need to have the blessings of our material well-being. Swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pramaditavyam. Do not neglect the self-study and teaching of the Vedas. This is the farewell advice to the students on the graduation day and the convocation day of a student. Deva pitrikaryabhyam na pramaditavyam. Do not neglect your duties to gods and ancestors. Here, there's a beautiful book written by I.K. Taimani, Indra Kumar Taimani, who was a chemistry professor. The title of the book is Gods and Goddesses. In that book, he writes, God is the function and the goddess is the power behind the function. It's a beautiful analogy a chemistry professor has written. He has written a beautiful commentary on Gayatri Mantra also, I.K. Taimani. So, there are a lot of energies which in the nature which has been supporting us in our work. We should not be neglecting our duties in thanking these energies and Mother Nature. This is very, very important. Then the farewell message, Matrudevo Bhava. How many schools are being built today? How many buildings are being built today? Very close competition is the number of old age homes which are being built today. We need to understand, because these values that mother is your first goddess. Matrudevo Bhava, Pitrudevo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atithi Devo Bhava, Yanyanavadyani Karmani, Tani Sebitavyani, No Itarani, Yanyasmakagam Sucharitani, Tani Tvayopasyani, No Itarani. That is what is said. Whatever actions are free from egoism, they should be practiced, not others. Whenever you do a job, it should not make you egoistic. That is a very important thing. Whatever good conduct you find among us, that is the teachers, that alone should be practiced and not others. There are negativities in everybody. Do not practice what is negative inside me also. The teacher used to tell the student in the ancient education system. The Mundaka Upanishad, it says, Tadvijnanartham sa gurumeva gachet samitpanihi shrotriyam brahmanishtam. After examining one's life of experiences and recognizing that one cannot gain by any action infinite eternal happiness which is already there inside us, that one is longing for. The scripture itself advises that he should approach a teacher who is well versed in the scriptures and who is well established in the Brahman to gain that particular knowledge. This should, in today's education, contemporary education, mean a person who has gone deep into his or her subject, and always a research based teaching would always be better than just teaching without going deep into a subject. And the chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita says tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te gnanam gnaninaha tattvadarshinaha. Tadvidhi pranipatena, with a feeling of service, with reverence in the heart, curiosity which is in our mind, with curiosity, we need to approach a teacher who will enlighten us in that knowledge. With these thoughts, we will see what is required in the contemporary learning space. The three interactions in a learning space is very important. Learner-content interaction, learner-instructor interaction, and learner-learner interaction. In a learning space, these are the three interactions which happen. The first interaction, which is the learner-content interaction, content could be in the form of a book, it could be in the form of our World Wide Web, wherever we see, it could be in the form of the notes what the faculty member gives, it could be any content. Very importantly, in our field of knowledge, respect to that content which we are pursuing, in the field of study which we are pursuing, the respect towards that field of study is very important. Learner-content interaction. One is respect for the author who has written it, because he gives his POV. POV is point of view. Whether we need to add, look into a gap into it, or whether we need to add on to it, or we want to say that that is the Purva Paksh and we want to establish a Siddhant. The ancient writers, ancient thinkers of India would never thrash any content. They would read it, they would understand it, they would look at the perception and not the writer. This is very important. What is written is more important than who wrote it. Rather than having a person in focus, we should have the subject in focus. So when that happens, the perception is important. They call, when you take the Brahma Sutra Bhashya, when you take the Gita Bhashya, when you take the Bhagavad Bhashya, they write the Purva Paksh. This was written by all the writers like this, which we can call in modern day literature review. And this is the Siddhant, which or the perception which I am going to establish through my writing. So the learner content interaction has to happen on a continuous basis, because once going and coming out is not going to help. Again and again, again and again, again and again, again and again, we have to go into the same subject. There is a beautiful story also in the Rig Veda where a 21 lettered mantra, we can take it as a formula. A 21 lettered formula was learnt by two students, Nrmeda and Parushepa, For 15 long years. 15 long years, they learned 21 letters. Please understand, this is a very important aspect. Today, we have 176 credits which has to be got by a student. The National Education Policy talks about specializations, honors, degree through research, where one particular subject is being focused. Whether you take earlier, we used to take a BSc or a BA, three majors, and then take it for 3 years and then put it. Today we have one specialization out of which where we take it for a longer time. So slowly we are trying to converge that more time has to be spent to one particular field which you are passionate about. So for 15 long years, they learned a mantra, a formula, using which you can create fire. After 15 years, in the same way, the teacher on the convocation day, he sent these students. While leaving, both of them came to a crossroad and both were parting ways. One was going to his village, the other was going to his village. And there they said, let us practically apply what we have learned. So the first student, Nrumeda, he applies the formula, the 21 lettered formula, and beautifully there is a smoke which comes out in front of him. Then Parushepa uses the same formula and fire comes out of him, comes out in front of him with all its glory. And Rumeda addresses Parushepa as Rishi. He addresses him as Rishi. Rishi is a person who has seen the same thing again and again and again and again. It is Rishi who is a Rishi. Again and again entering the body of knowledge. The body of knowledge, the letters might be the same, the subject might be the same, but we change over a period of time. So the learner-content interaction is very important, and with respect to the content, to the author, and to the teacher who is teaching that subject. With these three respects, we need to enter this learner-content interaction. The second one is the learner-instructor interaction. Instructors are facilitators today. With Sugata Mitra's experiment on the hole in the wall experiment, which he started, self-organized learning environments. There's a beautiful experiment which is going on called the self-organized learning environments, where self-learning is the order of the day, and a lot of papers have come that the universities of tomorrow is that of the cloud. The brick and mortar universities are soon going to perish. This is what was being told, and we are seeing with this pandemic, a lot of new things are emerging. So learner-instructor interaction is the second one. And the third one is the learner-learner interaction. Learner-learner interaction, where we talk of peer learning, we talk of team learning, we talk of accounts being taught by commerce graduates to an engineer, statistics being taught by an engineer to a commerce graduate in a post-graduation MBA program. Communication is taught by students or learners who have grown in urban cities to students who have not seen urban cities, who are in villages. So peer learning, quality circles, these are all very important aspects. So three types of interaction. The teacher has many qualities. He has to be grounded in knowledge, has to have a firm mind. He has to always be thinking in terms of student development. He has to be an idol and have an idealized influence. He has to be an inspirational motivator. He has to treat different students differently because the personality of each learner is different. He has to stimulate a learner intellectually. He has to be always balanced in mind, has to be truthful, has to be on time, has to respect time, has to be free from ego. When we talk of the student satisfaction survey, which NAC does today, or when we talk of the student feedback form, which is recommended both by the UGC and the NAC today, we talk of how much of time a teacher gives outside the class. This is one of the parameters in the feedback form. How much of time the student gives outside the class and how much of time for doubt clearance is given inside the class, whether the teacher comes prepared to the class. This is very important. Unless and until the fundamentals are strong, every class today with good students in them is going to be a learning experience. Learner instructor interaction. When the learner interaction, learner interaction, the students has got a student has got a lot of qualities to develop. Sadbuddhihi sadhu sevi samuchita charitaha. They need to grow in character. They need to grow in wisdom. So every learning space, very importantly, the ancient Indian wisdom says, delight and knowledge personified. It should be a place where delight manifests itself. It should be a temple of learning. The Bhagavad Gita says, Yataidhamsi samithognihi bhasmasat kurute arjuna jnanagnihi sarvakarmani bhasmasat kurute yatha. Like how Yathaindamsi samithognihi bhasmasat kurute arjuna, ho Arjuna. When the fire is lit, when the lamp is lit, all darkness is gone. In the same way, when the knowledge lamp of knowledge is lit, the ignorance is gone. Learning brings about a permanent change in behavior. I tell my faculty members and also the placement cell which is there in the first semester when they come, we need to have their photograph. We also need to have their initial SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. When they are in the third semester, we need to again monitor them. When they are in the fifth semester and sixth semester in the UG, or when they are in the first, second, third, fourth in the PG, when we go on monitoring them, we will understand the trajectory with which every student has gone up. For this, one thing is the manpower. If there is no manpower, we can have student quality circles. Quality circles are basically voluntary teams which come together and they can facilitate the entire process of either the placement cell management or even the learning space management. Over the last 1 year, in our institution, 113 students have been quality circle volunteers who have been doing this particular activity. The very important thing, as Maslow says, every learning space should be a journey from physiological needs to self-actualization. This is what is told by Maslow in his hierarchy of needs. And at the end of the undergraduation course or the post-graduation course, we will have wise graduates coming out and not graduates who are basically the same when they entered and they go out with marks card and nothing more. Tools, teaching strategies for holistic education. The goal has to be the whole child, complete child. Transformative approaches and not transmission or transaction. This is very, very important. Change what the teacher or facilitator has to do in the class is to change the POV, that is the point of view, habits of the mind, and the way they perceive. Today, every subject. We have subjects like the business news analysis. Since I'm a management faculty, I would speak that language. Business news analysis, or there is something called as the concept review. When we talk of business news analysis, the business newspapers today give or shed news about happenings in the industry across the world. A student could be asked to select a business news. What happened at Microsoft, what Satya Nadella did, what Kiran Majumdar Shah in Biocon did, or what Bill Gates did in Microsoft. If they can take it up and then being in the protagonist shoe, being in the protagonist shoe, if they can analyze that particular news based on the forces which are acting on the industry as to why he has taken this particular decision, and then present it to the entire class. At that point in time, slowly we are guiding a student to change the points of view rather than being just a commentator. It is not news reporting, it is news analysis. Or there is something called as the concept review. In the concept review, there are institutions like the Central University of Rajasthan which creates knowledge. There are some institutions which are teaching institutions only. So the institutions and universities which create knowledge, if they have a journal or they publish in a journal like Harvard Business News, the IIM review. So what happens is, if these are subscribed by the library, in the class, if a student is asked to go to the, because library footfalls is gradually decreasing across institutions, if an opportunity is given in the timetable and they are asked to go and then refer to the library, or based on their specialization, what is the latest happening in the industry around them, and they are asked to give presentations in the class, that also develops their point of view, the habits in mind, and the world views on a particular subject. Teach as to how to understand information, how to decipher information, develop the critical and reflective thinking skills, drive personal and social transformation. Very importantly, the Bhagavad Gita says, Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashihi nirmamo bhutva yuddhasva vigatachvaraha. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa. That means without attachment, we need to do that particular job. And secondly, without, we need to emphasize connection between subjects and not fragmentation. Two important aspects is integration and comprehensiveness. Look at connections in content. Only then you have multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary research which are going to happen. Team mixed ability student and mixed age students, because today diverse students come. Student diversity in the class is very important. Flexible pacing for slow learners and fast learners, and resort to transdisciplinary inquiry. So earlier it was one discipline, then we had multidisciplinary, then we had interdisciplinary, and today we are in the age of transdisciplinary, which is encompassing. So integration, linking new knowledge with the old. Once we start doing it, we go deeper and deeper into things. Every learner should be capable of modifying and enriching existing knowledge when he or she takes in new inputs. And comprehensiveness is placing learning in broad, realistic contexts rather than decontextualized and compartmentalized contexts. If this is done in the class, I think the class would be more complete. Principles of establishing quality learning spaces. This is from the overview of quality learning environments from Peter Smith. It is cited. Trust and respect between all participants in the learning space. Both learner and mentor work towards a single objective, that is the learner's success. That was what the ancient Indian gurus used to do. Guru is Gu is Andhakar, Ru is removing that particular darkness. That was the only objective. Getting students interested very early in the process, challenging students to shift their paradigm on a continuous basis, that is Kaizen or Suthar, setting clear and high expectations, encouraging risk taking, seeking student feedback regularly by using assessment on a consistent and timely basis. Very importantly, institutions take feedback, faculty feedback at the end of the semester. It is always advisable to take it twice in a semester, once after 3 weeks and once at the end of the semester. Because after 3 weeks, if we can see scope for improvement, there is time in the semester to do that scope for improvement. Measuring and documenting progress and growth, creating a collaborative learning space. Very importantly, collaboration between learner teacher, and creating a balance between structure and flexibility. Kenichi Ome has written a beautiful book called The Mind of a Strategist. He is one of the top 5 strategists of the world, Kenichi Ome. He says when we go to the West, everything is frameworked. When you go to the East, everything is strategy. And strategy is a long-term plan, keeping the objectives of the institution or the organization. How to reach the objective, how to reach the vision of the institution. So creating a balance between framework and strategy is very, very important. And the fundamentals of learning at the learning space, very importantly, are 3. Make a meaning of the learning space, which is individual development. Managing learning, participating and contributing is basically the team development. And managing learning environments is basically the institutional development. Individual development, team development, and very importantly, institutional development. So when we are making a meaning of inputs, we need to think critically and creatively. Connect prior knowledge with new knowledge, and using language, symbol, and text, we should start learning. So think creatively and critically. The 10th verse of the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it says that a person has to be passionate. A person has to go to that particular subject with devotion. When that happens, dadami buddhiyogam tam yena maam upayantite. That creativity, that spark comes into a person. Connect prior knowledge with new knowledge, where we can develop the knowledge. For all these things, equanimity of mind is very important. The 4th chapter, 20, 21, 22 of the Bhagavad Gita, it says that focus on the activity and not on the results. Tyaktva karma phala sangam nitya trupto nirashrayaha. Always with satisfaction in the mind, with contentment in the mind. Yes, today I have moved a bit. Today I have moved a bit and I'm going slowly towards what I am expected to get. This is very important. And the final result, if the process is strong, the outcome is assured. Yadricha labha santushtaha, the 22nd verse of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Yadricha labha santushtaha. Dvandva tito vimatsaraha samaha siddha asiddhaucha kritva pina nibadhyate. This talks about the equanimity of mind. The 2nd chapter also, some of you would have heard during the Sunday sessions, that in the second chapter, 55 to 58, also talks about the mind and the sense control. The 55th verse of the second chapter is what is quoted here. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatan atmanyevatmana tushtaha stita pragnasya dochyate. Equanimity of mind, sense control, self-actualization, dedication to the learning process. Swadharme nidhanam shreyaha. As a learner, till the body drops, we need to be learning, and self-abnegation, losing our own selves while contributing to the society, is very important for individual development. The next one is the team development, engagement with others in learning, communicating ideas, feeling, perspectives, and understanding between each other, learner to learner and learner to teacher, relating to others, people's idea, that is empathy, compassion. So this has got many factors which the ancient Indian wisdom has said. I'm running out of time. Participating and contributing, which is in that we have interconnectedness, support the universe. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantuvaha parasparam bhavayantaha. This is a sutra, this is a mantra. These two, parasparam bhavayantaha shreyaha param avapsyatam. The Bhagavad Gita says loka sangraha. Very importantly, individual social responsibility. Loka sangraha means individual social responsibility. If a student has got 35 and I have got 90, how can I contribute to that student's getting at least 70, if not 90? If he gets 95, I am the happiest person. Very importantly, in the third chapter, 20th verse, Krishna says, Karmanyeva hi samsiddhi astita janakadayaha. He quotes the story of King Janaka, Sita's father, who used to always do his duties in the spirit of Karma Yoga. Lokasangrahamevapi sampashyan kartumarhasi. Only through Lokasangraha. That is, this action of mine should contribute something to the society. With that frame of mind, he would work, and that makes a person stand tall. Yad yad acharati shreshtaha tattadeva itaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokaha tad anuvartate. The third chapter, 21st verse says, as an idealized influence, people are watching you. Whatever you do, if they idealize you, they will start doing in the same way. Final, the rewards have to be shared, and the pure learning is spoken beautifully in the 7th verse of the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Mai sarva midam protam sutre manigana iva. And managing learning environments, that is development of the universe or development of the institution or the society, taking personal responsibility to learn, adapting learning tactics, and persevering with the challenges, so that slowly, as we learn and contribute, the institution also learns. So the ancient Indian wisdom is today, Deming in his quality improvement has given us something called as the PDCA cycle. P stands for planning, D stands for doing, C stands for checking, and A stands for acting. Plan, do, check, and act. This is basically called as the Deming cycle in quality management. If you take the Gita, if you take many of the ancient Indian wisdom, first the teacher plans what he has to give to the student. This is very important. He plans. He tests his persistence, he tests his perseverance, and he plans. The first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna plans what has to be told to Arjuna. In the olden days, The musical instrument, I would be concluding in the next 5 minutes. The musical instruments, when you take it, the teacher used to make the musical instrument fully of wood, and both the sides also, it would not have that skin to bring out the sound, it would be of wood. So the teacher, when the student comes in, whether it's a tabla or a pakhavaj or a mridangam in South Indian parlance, or a pakhavaj or a tabla, the teacher used to say, go and play this instrument and then come back 100 times. He would take it and he would start playing it, both sides it's wood, and his hands start bleeding. Next day he comes and tells teacher it is bleeding. The teacher would say, okay, let it heal, then you start playing it again. He would do this for 1 full year. And after that, seeing the persistence of that student, he would lay his hands on the original music instrument. This is very important because the hands would have got seasoned in the meantime. Today, on the second class, a student wants to perform on the stage. This is what is the difference between ancient learning and present learning. Reality shows have come up and students need to perform. So first he plans from the second chapter to the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. He preaches to Arjuna what is rightful action. And in the 72nd verse of the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he checks whether Arjuna has understood what has to be told, what has to be done. And finally, Arjuna stands up in the 73rd verse of the 18th chapter and he says, Sthitosmi gatasandehaha karishye vachanam tava. O Krishna, I will do what you say. My dear brothers and sisters, we need to understand that Deming, after the Second World War, would have come out with something called as the PDCA cycle, but our ancient Indian wisdom talks about this PDCA cycle 5,000 years back. And what kind, concluding this particular session, what kind of education system is needed for the 21st century? There are some, as 21st century education system must meet the needs of the whole person and be built on explicit assumptions of connectedness, wholeness, and being. Being is what is there inside us. 21st century education should seek to enrich the mind, warm the heart, and awaken the spirit of every learner. It should provide opportunities for students to be creative, contemplative, and imaginative. Very importantly, for each of these points, a lot of time in the board of studies has to be spent. It should allow time to tell old and new stories of heroes, ideals, and transformation. One improvement here is tell new stories of not heroes, but the heroism inside them. That is very, very important. It should encourage students to go well deep into themselves, the inside out approach which Bhagavad Gita speaks. Kurmangani vasarvashaha indriyani indriyarthebhyaha tasya prajna pratishtita, and also the human affairs. It should value service to others and that of the planet. 21st century curriculum should value physical, mental, and spiritual knowledge and skills, which is NEP has brought in some of it. Now, it should present knowledge within cultural and temporal contexts rather than as facts to be memorized or dogma to be followed. When we are talking about the memorization, the rote learning has to go. It should be integrative across all disciplines, emphasizing interrelationship and interconnectedness. It should challenge students to find their own place in space and time. Very importantly, excellence is a moving target. Excellence is a moving target, and we should compete against our own self and to reach for the highest aspiration of the human spirit. 21st century education should be meaningful while enabling individuals and communities to co-create preferred futures. It should be a joyous, celebratory, experience. The home of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa was called Majer Ghar. That means the house of happiness. Every learning space should ooze with delight and should ooze with happiness. Concluding, a teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, sir, for this mesmerizing session. And I am sure, with all that you have said, someday or the other, sooner than later, we will be there. And our education system will reach that quality. And now I invite questions from the audience. I am sure that all of them are filled with energy and they have a lot of things to discuss and ask you. So, anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask directly. Yes, Mr. Nishank Bohra, can you ask directly your question?
I'm Dr. Nishikant, and I'm speaking from South Africa. Thank you very much, sir. It was wonderful. I'm lucky to, and I had few sessions in between some meetings, so I need to go here and there. My apologies on that, but whatever I was able to listen, that was phenomenal, and I think it weaves a thread from Arshvidya from the time that we used to hear. So, yeah, thank you for bringing the glory to all of us again. But a quick one. How many years of constant reading of Bhagavad Gita had assisted you? Because I am finding it difficult. It is good when you read, but it is very difficult to quote and narrate.
Yeah. There are two things. One thing is, you asked me the first question, how many years of reading of Bhagavad Gita has assisted? See, when I was in my seventh standard, my father used to attend Chinmayanandaji's lectures. And that was the time when I was a kid and I was not even interested into many things. But forcibly, he used to take his patpati, that is a scooter, and then take me along. I used to sleep off half the lecture. But still, today, when those verses are coming to memory without even referring to them, maybe those inputs during that lecture has gone inside me, and the body is a chemical reactor. We do not know when it has reacted and then it has come. Of course, I have learned this over a period of 12 years from a guru. 20 days a month and 12 years. It took me to learn the entire Krishna Yajurved, and mornings we used to have our Ved lessons, and every weekends we used to have the Bhagavad Gita with the meaning. We used to have this. It took around a decade to actually, and very importantly, uh, instead of means one is reading from the book which gives us the information, but a guru gives us dedication on that particular thing. So I've been blessed to have gurus who have taught me this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So very
Thank
kind.
Sir, we have one question from Dr. Dhaneshwar Prushti. He asks, why and when did we lose the trend of Indian traditional knowledge?
Why and when?
Yeah. Why and when did we lose the trend of Indian traditional knowledge?
See, Indian traditional knowledge has been used, all the modern knowledge which is coming. I'll give you a very simple example. Stephen Covey, Robin Sharma, all these people say they have become writers because of our Indian traditional knowledge. See, the present books which are coming from even the Western world have been rooted in Indian traditional knowledge. We need to understand that very, very clearly. So, in fact, in one of the seven habits of the highly successful people, Stephen Covey has openly said that it's based on Gita. And when we are talking about a lot of Sudhar philosophies which are happening today, which some of the companies are coming up with. The Indian traditional knowledge is also being used in some of the manufacturing setups. It has not come up in a big way. Still, the Japanese knowledge is being used in the manufacturing system, but there are places where the Indian traditional knowledge is coming up. The communication aspect, where when we talk of Ramayana, how to communicate. The Bhagavad Gita, when it talks in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, there have been a lot of lectures which has happened. Venkat R. Krishnan is one leading researcher who has also contributed in his consultancy on Karma Yoga through Bhagavad Gita as to how social responsibility can be developed by institutions in terms of contributing what you call corporate social responsibility. There also a lot of consultancy has happened. Venkat R. Krishnan, of course, now he lives in Chennai. He was the leadership coach in Harvard. So a lot of studies have happened and implementation has also happened. One more researcher who has also been contributing to companies through his consultancy is Dr. B. Mahadevan. Dr. B. Mahadevan is an operations professor in IIM Bangalore. He has written a couple of textbooks, and Ancient Indian Wisdom is one of his researches. And in many of the industries, through IIM doing consultancy services, he is also he has created some models and then contributed to these particular companies based on Ancient Indian Wisdom. These are some examples which I remember.
Sir, one question from my side. When we are talking of Indian traditional knowledge,
Yeah.
what is the period we are considering? Like, is it from Vedas to the contemporary, or we have to stop somewhere and exclude something, or is it all inclusive? Like, how do we define it?
Yeah. See, if you take historians, they will give you a period, so much BC and other things. But when we are talking of our sampradaya, we say Vedas are apaurushaya. It was there even before mankind. That is what we say. But very clearly, Bhagavad Gita was written 5,000 years back. Gita was written because Dwapar Yug, when we are talking of, it was 5,000 years back, it was written. And when the Ramayana happened, Itihasa, when Valmiki wrote they say that even the NASA website says that it was around 17 lakh years back. They say that Adam's bridge, which they show that the Setu, which is there. So a time frame, by looking into all these things, they say that it was there in 2600 BC, 3000 BC, as recent as that. From the beginning of creation to this particular period is ancient Indian wisdom, what they call.
Thank you so much, sir. Yes, Janmajit sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Pranam, sir.
Pranam, pranam.
I have a very naive question, if you could address that.
Nothing is
Yeah. So my concern and question is that the actual original Bhagavad Gita was written and narrated in language Sanskrit.
Yeah.
For many of us, I can tell about myself, it is impossible to understand everything that is there in Sanskrit. So I would probably depend upon a translation of Bhagavad Gita. Could you please suggest which ones are the good translations in Hindi and English? If you could please shed some light on that, would be really nice for me.
Yeah. In English, of course, there are many commentaries, but one which really appeals to a person who is new to Bhagavad Gita also is the universal message of Bhagavad Gita by Swami Ranganathananda. Swami Ranganathananda is from the Ramakrishna order. He has written Bhagavad Gita, which anybody can understand. It is a 3-volume, and it's not all that expensive. It is 360 rupees, all three put together. And Swami Ranganathanandaji's commentary is expansive and beautifully understood in simple words also. If you want it in more complex English, a free download, which also is one of my favorite books, which is Essays from the Gita by Sri Sri Aurobindo. Essays from the Gita, Sri Sri Aurobindo. But Sri Sri Aurobindo basically would never complete sentences. It is like notes. So he would write and then it would go. But it is a phenomenal book. Then the third book on which researches have happened. If you look at Harvard University and other universities, more than 1 dozen researches have happened on that book, which is called Gita Rahasya. Gita Rahasya, which was originally written in Marathi by Lokmanya Balagangadhar Tilak when he was in jail, that has been translated into English now. Gita Rahasya is another book. In Hindi, there is a book, Ram Sukdas Ji, Gita, and Ram Sukdas Ji's book is there in Hindi. I could also see that as a download in the net. You could also see that. So then there is, I do not know if Gita is there, but Srimad Bhagavat, Ramcharitmanas and all is there. You could go to their website, Rambhadracharji from Chitrakoot, Tulsi Mutt. He is blind from childhood, but his lectures are phenomenal in Hindi. So Rambhadracharji's book is also, his books are very, very understandable, and it brings immediate devotion in the heart. So these are some of the books.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, myself, Dr. Sunil Sharma, I have a very, I would say, interesting question, I would say. I am following Acharya Agnivrat, and he is scientist, I would say, specifically in Vedas, in Vedic physics. Once I was seeing his lecture. He was giving lecture in a reputed university, and he has translated one a part of Veda, and by taking and Dvibhas किया है उन्होंने निरुत्तर ब्राह्मणा ग्रंथ का. It is one of the 6 Vedangs of Vedas. Now मैंने जो उसमें देखा, what I have seen that in that lecture, the persons who are contemporary scientists or who are physicists also, they are not accepting the views, means the views which are presented in Vedas, and they generally neglect it from the very beginning. And after going through some of the, say, Vedic Rasmi theory and all these, I have come to know that these theories are better in explaining most of the phenomena than even the published scientific literature. So
absolutely.
So what I feel is that our Indianness, or you can say we are blindly following everything from the West, specifically in theoretical physics, but we are not giving the same, you can say, not giving the same platform to already we have a lot of things in Vedas, because Vedic languages, they require a lot of interpretation. It took around 10 years for Acharya Agnivrat to translate a small portion. So my thing is that in the current education scenario, we need to inculcate the studies at the very beginning, so that the fruitful year of a student, say from 15 onwards, he or she able to grasp things grassroots level, because it is too technical. Even the Vedic translations, even the Vedangs, they are in very, very difficult language. And so I think a complete system has to be there. And this is my thing that I came to know. Yes.
Definitely, Sunil Sharma ji, whatever you are saying is perfectly right. Because see, what used to happen in the early days also, when somebody was giving his commentary on the Vedas, there were a lot of people who were in the Veda Bhashya Mat, who used to challenge this, and then they used to destroy a lot of things which are being done also. That is the reason many of our granths or bhashya has not seen the light of the day. So if we can dwell deep into the Vedas, as I told during the lecture also, Vedaha Akila Dharma Moolam. If you want even gynecology or even physics, it is there in the Vedas. And as you rightly said, I think the national education policy, which wants to bring in the ancient Indian wisdom right from the primary school level, the foundational level, I think some amount of education has to come from that particular side, the value education, and it has to be developed. This is a very good observation, and I hope central universities would influence the policy makers would to definitely do this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. I think there are a lot of comments and appreciations regarding your talk, and but there are no more questions, and we are also
Can
running.
can I ask a last question, Dr. Chinmay Malik?
Yes, madam, sure,
Yeah,
please.
sir, good evening.
evening.
Professor Parthasarthy, I teach literature, and listening to you was a celebratory experience, as you yourself used the word. It was utter happiness and sheer delight which we got. You not only blended the Occidental and the Oriental, but you also very minutely paved the path how we need to nurture the spiritual, mental, and the physical self. I have a very basic question. Your talk was very, very self-explanatory, but something which is, and I don't want to lose this opportunity. I would ask you if you can just help me understand what constitutes the soul of enlightened living out of all these. Is it a mingling of all the experiences and the things which you talked about, or is it something very specific which you yourself experienced and would like to share it with us? Thank you.
Yeah. The soul of an enlightened living is the question, right?
Right, sir. So what
Yeah.
constitutes that?
Yeah. See, basically, the physical, mental, spiritual development, uh, the enlightenment comes when we start slowly going inside and understanding our own self. For us to understand our own self, your sense organs and your mind do not allow you to travel inside. It gets stuck or it ties itself outside. For some time in a day, slowly, we need to contemplate from inside, traveling inside like a tortoise. Yada samharate chayam kurmangani va sarvashaha indriyani indriyarthebhyaha tasya prajna pratisthita. This is called the Yatamana Sanya, the first step of spiritual development of a human being or spiritual unfoldment of a human being, which is the 58th verse of the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Once we start doing that and then start nurturing our own self in terms of learning better every day, bringing down our anger, bringing down our negativities or the weaknesses on an everyday basis. So that is a mental and emotional development. And every day we do our swadhyay, which the Upanishads just we saw that, and intellectually also stimulating us, because perfection is a ever moving target. It cannot be reached. We can go closer and closer and closer. This is called brahmacharya. So once we start doing this and conditioning ourselves in all these sheets, Annamaya Kosha is the body. Annamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. These are the 5 sheets which Sanjeev Patraji would beautifully teach in his yoga class. So once we start nourishing these things physically, which is Annamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, the sattvic mind, which slowly starts getting rid of the negativities, then Pranamaya Kosha, then the Vijnanamaya Kosha, where we go inside, illuminating our intellect, and the Anandamaya Kosha, go towards the soul and see that beauty which is there inside. So once we start doing this on everyday basis, slowly we start becoming more and more happier. And this is how enlightened soul would enjoy every moment of his stay on this earth, and says that next moment, the previous moment was happier, next moment also should be happy, and this thing, this happiness of mind should also be distributed to four other people. This is very important. Recently, there was an experiment done also that, of course, this is beyond your question. There were some people who were distributed into two groups, and they were asked what makes you happy and all those things. They all gave, some people say possessions make me happy, some people say food makes me happy, some people say health makes me happy. Okay, and one group was given 350 rupees, the other group was given 1500 rupees, and they said, you can, in one day's time, either you spend it on yourself or you spend it to on somebody else. And the next day evening, this 350 rupees, both the groups were called. And when the survey was taken, people did not mind whether they were given 350 rupees or 1500 rupees. They did not mind because they did not know that somebody else was given more than them. But people who shared that money for the enjoyment or happiness of somebody else were more happier than people who spent it for their own selves. So this was an experiment which was recently done, and sharing that happiness with four other people would actually give us more happiness, is what was told. So on these 5 sheets which the Taittiriya Upanishad speaks, if we can develop every day with awareness, I think this would constitute the soul of an enlightened person.
Thank you very much. I'm really deeply indebted to you for showing this path. It's not only very thought-provoking, but very contemplative too. And of course, requires a lot of skill and training to gradually attain this. Wonderful. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
One more question, whether would you like to take, or shall we send it to you for answer later on? Like
anything, I think we can take this question and then close the session.
So it's yeah. So we take this last question. It's from Shrida Jashrani. Question is, sir, as per my understanding, Gita is based on Dvaitvad and Upanishads are based on Advaitvad, dualism and non-dualism. One says about God Krishna and the other about Brahma. Please tell which path to follow.
Yeah, there are different darshans. See, one thing is the first part of the question. The Upanishads also have got both. Bheda, Abheda. Both are there. And Bheda, Bheda is also there. Bheda is dualism, as she has rightly said. The second one is Abheda, which is Advaita. Dvaita and Bheda, Bheda. So Upanishad, see, when we talk of Shankara, he has selected Advaita only and then given his commentary. When you talk of Ramanuja, he has taken Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita and given his commentary. And when you take of Madhva, he has taken Dvaita and given his commentary. So one thing is, these are 3 perceptions on the same Veda. So whatever appeals to you from the Upanishads, you can follow that path. All 3 are true. Nothing is superior or inferior. Even great commentaries have said that is that perception, this is this perception. And great Mahamahopadhyayas also say that from a guru, try to understand, means initially take the lessons of all the 3. Whichever appeals to you, go deeper into that. That is very important. Krishna is a manifestation of that supreme Brahman. For us to understand him better, whether it is Mahabharata, Puranas, or the Itihasas, they are basically commentaries of the Vedas and the Upanishads. Commentaries of the Vedas and Upanishads. As rightly somebody said, they are in Sanskrit. We cannot understand. In the Kali Yuga, Sanskrit is deteriorating because we take it as an optional language. That is why Krishna came down, the Brahman manifested the infinite, finitized himself to make we finites infinite. We need to understand. So he finitized himself and then told the rishis like Vedavyasa and Valmiki to write the same Upanishads and the Vedas in the form of stories, so that we understand it better. So when it comes to Dvaitvad, Advaita or Dvaita, when we call, you can follow either of the paths which appeal to you. This is important.
Thank you so much, sir. We are so much indebted to you for today's session. But we have to close now, and I call Mandal sir to propose the formal vote of thanks.
So before Mandal sir, I would like to express my personal gratitude on behalf of the whole university community for this really enlightening talk and giving us this wonderful direction. And we hope that we'll continue to have your blessings at the time whenever you can make it. So thank you so much.
The Honorable Vice Chancellor has been extremely, extremely kind to this soul. A lot of things which I heard, I don't deserve it. But to be very frank, I'm extremely honored, privileged to be amongst all of you today, because each one of you have really, really lived the subject which you people have been teaching. Thank you so very much for making me a part of this august community, and hope to keep meeting you again and again. Thank you so much.